On today's episode of The Author's Exchange, we sit down and speak with Tanya Ross, author of Rising Up.
And I do believe happiness is a choice. And I do believe it's something that we all have to work hard for. But in our society, there is just so much emphasis placed on things like happiness. And if you're not happy, then you're not a successful person. And if you're successful, then you need to be happy that you are happy. And those are all ideas that I kind of, shoot up in this novel that are not necessarily true especially for young people, I think. But in our society as a whole, everything is geared to what makes you happy.
The Author's Exchange. Your host, Captain Christopher German. Brought to you by The Charted Life. And sponsored by Whither We Tend, a novel by Captain Christopher German. Welcome to The Author's Exchange. Hey there, this is Captain Christopher German for The Author's Exchange, a one-week, half-hour podcast that we do that airs everywhere you can find good podcasts, like Google Podcasts and Amazon, all kinds of good places like that. If you're into podcasting, this is the best half-hour conversation you will hear on the web, and it is The Author's Exchange. Today, I have a very talented and lovely guest named Tanya Ross, and she's the author of the book Rising Up. I just finished reading it a couple of days ago, and it is a young adult novel. But I think one of the things we're going to find in this episode is that this is not just for young adults. This is a very young adult novel, and I think we're going to have a good time talking about it. But let me tell you a little bit about her first. Tanya Ross was born and raised in San Diego County, her happy place. Although Southern California is a particular kind of paradise, she desires a world where everyone is kind and compassionate and upbeat, which became one of the themes of her new novel, Rising Up. For 32 years, she was an educator of English, history, avid, and student leadership. She loves teaching and kids. Her students are a daily inspiration. Her exit from the educational arena allowed her to indulge in her hopes, dreams, and goals in what she taught for so many years, writing. The first novel begins her lifelong dream of writing meaningful novels for young adults. When she's not creating new worlds, you can find her reading, spending time with her husband and 2 kids, and walking her golden retriever, Honey. That's a cool name for a dog, isn't it? Well, before I talk anymore, let's meet the woman. Hey, as lovely as she is talented, please let me introduce Miss Tanya Ross.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. And I just want to thank Christopher for allowing me to have this opportunity to talk about my novel. It's very exciting to be able to talk to audiences out there, if not in person, then at least over the internet. So thank you so much to The Charted Life and to Christopher for today.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And that's one of the cool parts about, this, we were just talking about this modern age of the internet. We don't have to, it's not even possible to do book tours anymore. So trying to get your words out there about your book and get to be heard and have the author talk about the book is really a difficult motion. So thank God for Zoom and for the internet and for social media and podcasting and all these other great things. And today we're going to talk about Rising Up. So before we do anything else, in your words, Tanya, tell us, what is Rising Up about?
Rising Up is a novel that I think everyone should read just because it touches on so many themes that are going on in our world today. Basically, the plot is set in a dystopian world. It is in a city where everyone there is perfect because they are monitored for their levels of happiness every single day. And they do this because this community, this society has survived terrible things. They've survived a world war, and they really do not want any of that kind of thing repeated. So their citizens sign a contract that they're going to put their best foot forward every day, be positive, to be up, to be happy, to eliminate all kinds of negativity in the world. And that's all lovely. I mean, we would all love to have that kind of society, and hopefully everyone strives for that. But unfortunately, this this society, this city, has a young girl. Her name is Ember, and her mother unexpectedly gets sick and she dies. That's not really a spoiler. That happens in the very beginning of the book. And in a place like this, where sickness has been eliminated, this is not only unexpected, but it's an enigma. And she can't get any answers, nor can she grieve because that's considered to be a negative emotion. So she starts to delve into what's happening, and why no one will answer her questions about her mom. And she discovers all kinds of things going on that she did not know about, at all. So
Well, and
that's
that
the
is
point.
the substance and the textual adventure of reading too, which is behind this story. Which that's what I really wanted to talk to you about. Is you really market this book as a young adult book, but there's some very sophisticated and I think very almost troubling things that are happening beneath the veneer surface of happiness in this town. And one of those characters in the book that really embodies that, which I found one my favorite character in the book, was Xander. Talk to us a little bit about Xander's place in this story and how you came up with him.
Okay, Xander really is, I mean, trade secret, my favorite character. He was so much fun to create, because he is the rebel in the story. And he decides early on that he is not going to have any of this, that he wants to be himself and he wants to be independent and not be told what he has to do. And so he is, he's the embodiment of someone who is the nonconformist, the one that, will push against the grain no matter what it costs him, just so that he can be himself. And I love this character not only because he was super fun to write, and really kind of such a strong character, but it's my hope that he inspires people that read this to not go with the flow, to fight back, and to strike out, as needed, in difficult situations.
Yeah. Well, then that brings up the other character in this book, which Ember is the balancing point between these two worlds. And then there's the other side of the yin to the yang, which is Will. And
Yeah.
Will is a buttoned down, put together kind of guy that he's a hero in his own right. He does all kinds of good, great things, and he's moving up through the ranks very quickly. Now, that's actually something that we should really get into right now. Is how do people, in your words, how do people elevate themselves in society in this particular dystopian Orwellian tale?
Okay, so in this society, their wrist device called an alt is very similar to a smartwatch, that we would wear today, but it goes beyond that and it does measure emotion. And so what it picks up is then translated into points, into happiness points that registers on a giant computer in the city. And that computer then determines, how these people rise up in their society and what kinds of privileges they get to have based on how happy they are on a day-to-day basis. So they accumulate points almost in the way that, I guess, an analogy would be a video game, that you level up, as you get these points, and as kind of go through these hoops, over and over again. So it measures those points, and then those are translated into things like food and your standard of living, where you live, and that's, in other words, that's a labeled society. It's a labeled situation. So you start all the way down at level 1, and then you move up through society all the way to level 18, which is where all of the real juicy privileges are, based on those points that you accumulate as you go from day to day.
But that's actually, I mean, that's a statement I think, which really translates into modern America, and in fact to the the postmodern world, the industrial world is, it's a positive feedback loop in a lot of ways, isn't it? Where the happier you are, the better your life is, so the happier you are. There's a documentary that they did called "In Sickness and in Wealth," and they tracked the health outcomes and the life outcomes of people that lived in happier societies. And as it worked out, boom, the happier you are, the longer you live. And so I think that's one of those sophisticated things that I was really excited to see in this book, is that in a lot of ways, you're poking your finger in the eye of, affluence and happiness, how they're linked together. And that's actually something that's kind of scared me, because I was thinking, if this doesn't go to if this gets the impressionable young girl that thinks she needs to be beautiful to be happy, that could really be a challenge here. So talk about that. How did you navigate all those thoughts?
This is just something that kind of bothers me, because I have worked with young people for over 30 years, and I have seen their ups and downs, and I have seen the kinds of things that they go through, from their, desire to look good, their desire to fit in, what measures their happiness as they go through their lives. And, there are just so many factors that go into that whole ideal of happiness. And I think that especially young people, measure their happiness by, other people's standards, by other people's happiness. And I think that that's really a scary thing, for young people to have to do or find themselves in. I really wanted the whole theme of, you're happy because you make that happiness for yourself. It is not based on what other people think of you.
Well, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, and particularly, I think we should discuss the nature of happiness in modern society, and how you put a megaphone on it in this book. But first, we got to take a little bit of a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk with Tanya Ross, author of Rising Up, and but first, we got, like I said, got to pay some bills. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message. At the Authors Exchange, we love authors. We love their advice.
Save the tomatoes for Packy.
We love the fact that they wrote the book.
And I am the author
there
of
you go.
The Destiny trilogy. Book 1 is Destiny Revealed. Book 2 is Paths of Destiny. And book 3 is Quest for Destiny.
We love the fact that it is their book and they are the ones in charge.
This one publishing company just kept bothering me to publish it, so I went ahead and did it.
But who are we to tell the story? I'm not going to tell you about the book. I'm not going to tell the story. It's not my job to tell the author's tale. It's the author's job to tell the author's tale. And that's why we sit down and talk with authors every week on Fridays for a half an hour. The best half-hour conversation you'll hear on the web, only at the Authors Exchange. Find us where you find your favorite podcasts and on YouTube every Friday at noon for the Authors Exchange. Hey, welcome back. I'm with Tanya Ross today. She is author of Rising Up. It is a young adult dystopian novel. There's a world war that tears the world apart, and this one community lives under a bubble, and they've said, we want to live together and we want to live happy. Well, that's not too different than what's going on in a lot of our world today, is it? And perhaps by taking a look at these fictional tales, we might learn a thing about ourselves, shan't we? Well, let's see what Tanya has to say about it. Tanya, I was thinking when you were talking in the last segment, I was thinking about Facebook. And I was thinking about social media and how it is such a rosy colored view that we get. And the algorithms that they put together really accentuate the happiness side of people's lives. And it doesn't look like anybody's having a tough time in their life. But in the truth of things is we're all having a tough time right now, especially with the pandemic going on and things being what they are. How did you think about when you were writing this book about what is it like in this modern world for the young adults that are living here? And what could they learn by looking at this extreme example of let's be happy time?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm so thankful that I grew up in a time where there wasn't social media. And I understand how social media, plays such a big part in everybody's lives now, including my own. I'm on there more than I wish that I was on there. But for young people, I think, putting things out there and getting approval for your posts, and that's a drive, is so similar to what these people do in this community in which they live in tranquility in my book. Because the alt is not too much further away from that approval rating, that idea that everything that you do is pretty much on display and being calibrated, much like Facebook and Instagram do, with their algorithms. And the things that Facebook and Instagram and some of these other platforms do, it rewards the number of people that approve of your particular post. And so people are putting things on there that are going to drive that up.
Yeah.
And so it's a pseudo environment that is very, very similar to what these characters are experiencing in
Hey, while I've got you, one of the things I love doing with this podcast is I love hearing the voice of the author behind the words. Is there a chance, since you have the book with you, is there a chance you could pick out a little excerpt right now and read us a little bit of your book?
Sure, I can do that. Okay, this is from chapter 5. And this is my main character. She is in a hospital room when this takes place. Ember. The word was weak, barely audible. Ember's head whipped back around. Mom, I'm here, Mom. You're talking, Ember cried. Don't wear. Talisa's voice faded out to a whisper. Mom, what? What shouldn't I wear? No time. Her mom's eyes were still closed, but her mouth quivered. Mom, please, what are you saying? She implored her mom to help her understand. I need you to fully wake up, Mom. Mom! A whoosh from behind distracted Ember from her mom's labored whisper. The unanticipated rush came from the automated door, blowing in a stubby nurse with red hair, cut in a smooth bowl shape. Go away. Ember's heart was tumbling once again, an intrusion, right when Mom was trying to tell her something important. The nurse, wearing a bright yellow uniform, stomped in. How's she doing, darling? We want to make sure her medication is high enough that she has pleasant dreams, Nurse Redhead, or whatever her name was, walked briskly to the bed, turned up the medication sliding into the tube, checked her mom's vitals being measured on the alt on her wrist, fluffed the pillow, and smiled. Ember was ready to burst. She jumped out of her chair and ran to this new person. She'd interrupted, but maybe she could help. Nurse, my mom talked. I haven't been able to talk to her for 2 weeks, and she actually spoke. Tears blurred her vision, and her whole body vibrated with nervous tremors. Sometimes that happens, and it's a blessing, Nurse Redhead murmured. Her eyes, twin puppy dog orbs, bore sympathy, but her face was tight. Yeah, but it's not just a fluke. She's coming back. I know it. Amber pushed down a rising instant hatred for this woman. The nurse could help, but it was clear she wouldn't. What kind of a nurse was she anyway? Amber clenched her fists, her frustration getting the best of her. Can't you at least look at her all? If she spoke, there's emotion. She's still alive, feeling stuff. Amber rushed over and picked up her mom's wrist, but saw nothing on the alt screen. How can there be darkness when her mom was full of light?
Let me stop you there, because that's exactly what I took away from this book is the duality and the fact that she's witnessing her mother die, and they're telling her, "Fuck up, enjoy it, be happy about it." That's just some of the twistedness that's in this book, I think. And you touched on so many of these things, because quite frankly, I mean, this is the same example we have on Facebook. Nobody wants to see the negativity come through there. You don't get likes for negativity, do you?
Right.
So, and I think that is the takeaway from this book. That is the I think the important message that both young adults and full grown screwed up adults like me can totally get behind is, it's not always about being happy, is it? We have to enjoy the sadness and the happiness, but we don't want a government that tells us to be happy, do we?
Right, exactly.
That being said, let's take another quick break. I got to have a glass of water right now because my alt points are a bit high on myself right now thinking about that. But we'll be right back. Talking with Tanya Ross, Rising Up, and when we get back, we're going to talk about some of the chances and some of the things that happen to undermine this community. And then we're also going to hear from Tanya about her advice for new authors. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
More than a century ago, Kenneth Ransom set out to sail the Great Loop of the United States. He did it in a boat he built himself with a couple of his friends, and he thought, you know what, this is just a cool little way to get around the United States. Well, he set up an entire industry, an entire world that people have been exploring ever since, and they've written at least 100 million books about it of all different titles. Well, we're going to make a movie about it, and we're going to call it The Great Loop. It's going to be a docuseries that involves 5 teams of sailors that we're going to select, teach them to sail, and put them in a brand new Catalina 42, just like this one. Well, we're going to hope that you like us on Facebook because it's coming down the pipe, but we're trying to find some help to make it happen. So give us a like on Facebook at The Great Loop Movie, and if you'd like to get involved, send us an email at info@thechartedlife.net. I'm Captain Christopher German for The Charted Life, and we are getting ready to set sail on the Great Loop.
And we're back with Tanya Ross, author of Rising Up. We've been chatting about the alt points and the happiness factor and how tranquility is all about happiness and all that kinds of good stuff. But it is a veneer, and happiness has the other side, which is darkness. And the character of Xander really brings about the textures of darkness in this world of happiness. But they have a underpinning which comes through chapters, and you do it in a very interesting way, I think. It starts off with these random chapters called journal entries. And the journal is the words of the guy that's in charge of everything. And he's not such a great guy, but you have to read the book to figure out why he's not such a great guy, I think. I don't want to give that spoiler away. But talk to me a little bit about your writing style and how you came up with the idea of putting the magistrate's voice through journal entries.
Well, because this book is written with point of view from my 3 main characters, Amber really is the main character, and she will be through all of this series. But I wanted each of the characters to be able to tell the story basically from their point of view. With Serpio Magnus, who is the magistrate of the city, the leader in control, I didn't want to get too much into his mind in book number 1, but I needed to let the reader know a little bit about what he was doing, and the way that he expresses himself has to be kind of under wraps because he's still expected to be, kind of the leader of this place. And he has certain allowances that other people are not allowed to have. But Serpio also keeps a lot close to the vest. He doesn't want to confide in anyone what his secret desires are and what's really going through his mind. So instead, he writes them in a journal. And this journal becomes very, very important to the plot, especially as we go through book 1 and then again into book 2. It's very prominent as we get into book number 2 in the series. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a peek into Serpio's mind that way, without divulging too much more about him, because I didn't want to give away the plot too quickly in book number 1.
Yeah, well, and this is a series of books, and we have to find out. It ends actually relatively abruptly, where you find out, oh my gosh, the city's about to fall apart, but you really don't get into all of the machinations of what comes next, and that I believe is in the next book, is it not? I didn't get a chance to read that one yet.
Yes.
Well, talk to me about that. What inspired you to put together a series of these things and really to take it into the next levels?
First of all, the story wasn't even close to being told, and I just so totally fell in love with my characters. I mean, I literally dream about them. That's how real they are to me. I know I sound a little bit bizarre, but that truly happens. And so I didn't want their story to end, and they have a lot to do that would not fit into book number 1, because they're just kind of tapping the tip of the iceberg here in book number 1 as to what's going on behind the scenes. So book number 2, which is not out yet, by the way, it will be out in either late May or early June. I'm really trying to get it out in May. It is a much darker book even than book number 1. It's grittier. You see a lot more of what's going on with Serpio because he does have his own chapters in book number 2. And so much happens with these characters. I'm super excited about book number 2. And, I even decided to call it a series because I didn't want to call it a trilogy in case their story wasn't finished in book number 3. So I'm really looking forward to continuing working with these people.
Advanced marketing, brilliant.
Yes.
Well, talk about, this is one of the things I love the fact that we do the authors exchange. Because I'm an author as well. And one of the things that I like to talk about authors is the experience they have with writing. And particularly one of our greatest viewers, I think, of this podcast is new authors or people thinking about publishing. Talk to me about how you approached the idea that you wanted to write. You've been thinking about writing for a very long time. How did you get into getting those first words on the page and starting this trilogy, this is series? How did you get started doing this?
Well, first of all, I couldn't wait. I mean, I loved my time in the classroom, but when you're a teacher, and I want everybody to understand this, there is no time for very much, because if you do a good job as a teacher, your hours are devoted to that, even when you walk out of the classroom. So when I retired and I decided, okay, now's the time, I think I waited, maybe 2 hours before I sat down because I already had this story kind of started, just little sketches of it. And so I had my idea. I knew exactly what it was that I was going to write. And I was just so excited to go about it. So for me, it was a labor of love, and it was really a dedication of my time and energy into the experience. However, I'll be honest with you, I was not prepared for how difficult it was going to be honest. I thought, okay, I know how to write. I can whip this out, no trouble. But it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life.
Well, as I think any author will tell you, writing the book is one of the easiest parts, I think. It's marketing the book and the world after writing and getting people to read it. That becomes where your soul really comes through in that thing. Talk to me about, how did you get published, and are you an independent publisher?
I am an independent publisher. Yes.
So you decided, I'm going to publish this book, and you just went out and did it. And that's the nice part about today's age. You can just independently publish. But talk to me about your journey since. You actually have a big thing going on Instagram right now, as I recall, because you have an award-winning cover, I think, right?
Yes, I do. I submitted my book into this cover competition, and out of something like 250 books, my cover was selected to be one of 18 different covers that people are voting on right now on Instagram. It is through the account of Samantha Goodwin Author on Instagram. And so she's put this together. And, my book, the cover is just so beautiful. Shout out to Natasha McKenzie, Miss Nat Mac, for designing this amazing cover. And the cover on my next one is just incredible also. So right now there's a competition, and anyone can vote. If you go to Samantha Goodwin Author on Instagram and drop her a DM and tell her that you want number 14, I just would appreciate it so much, because I do have a really amazing cover.
This has been a lot of fun, and a half an hour goes by very fast. Did I tell you, or did I tell you? Right?
For sure.
Okay. So, first of all, let me thank Tanya. Thank you so much. Tanya Ross, author of Rising Up. It is a series, and you're going to be able to check out that next book later on this spring. Tanya, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for having me. I just really have enjoyed being here and talking to everyone, including you, about this book.
Well, you're going to see Tanya all kinds of new places, because she is your number one young adult bestseller. Or
I was for a while. Those things go up and down. So that was pretty exciting.
That's the alt points. They go up, they go down, right?
That's right.
And you can join us every week on Fridays at noon for the Authors Exchange, where we invite independent authors on board, published authors, everybody that's got a book out there and they want to get their stories told and they want to get their stories heard. They come on this podcast and they talk to me for a half an hour. It's the best half an hour conversation you're going to find on the web. And thank you for joining us for this edition of the Authors Exchange. And we'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for watching.